Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner, and look who's here with me. It is none other than Garth Ennis.
Hello again, Andrew. How's it going?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Pretty good.
Excellent. Very good. That's all I need to know. Now, we're here to talk about your new series that's coming out from our friends at 2000 AD and Rebellion, and is tied into, and was a massive surprise to me when I heard that you'd been working on this. And it's tied into a movie that was very, very meaningful to me when I was a younger man, which is the one and only Hawk the Slayer. So before we talk about the film, how did this project come about, mate?
I'd been letting people know of my interest in it for some time. I'd asked various publishers when they asked me, what is it you'd like to do? Are there any franchises you're interested in? I would mention this to them, and I think word got around. And so when Rebellion got their hands on it, I believe it was Mike Mulcher who told the higher ups there that I would like to do it. And after that, it was a no-brainer, really. You do get asked this stuff over the years, is there that one thing you've always wanted to do? And then you tell them and they're like, oh, not quite sure what to do.
Which you must have had that reaction a lot when it came to this particular piece of IP, I would have thought.
Oh, yeah. Well, because other people will say The Terminator or Predator or Conan or Spider-Man or something. And I say that, and a lot of people haven't heard of it. Or I say something like Dirty Harry, and they go, that's an awkward one. Because the kind of stuff that they're used to, the kind of stuff that the industry likes to take a punt on. And I tend to like some of the stranger ones. Anyway, that's how it got to Rebellion, and that's how we're now looking at 5 issues with me and Henry Flint.
Amazing, mate. I'm ridiculously excited about it, just because it's been, for me, in the course of my life, one of those films that I saw at a particular time, and I took my kid brother to see it when it was released in 1980, and I think it had been on with the old Granada TV kids movie show Clapperboard, and I'd seen like a location report from the set, and I was like, man, what a British sword and sorcery movie, I've got to go and see that. And for many years, he and I were the only people I'd ever met who'd ever actually seen it. And so, what was your first exposure to Hawk the Slayer?
I was in Donegal, just over the border from Derry, in '81. My grandparents had a farm up that way, and I would spend a good deal of my summers there. And I asked my aunt if we could go and see, if she would take me and my friend to see Hawk the Slayer, and she gave in. And I think we'd seen a trailer for it on TV, or maybe there'd been an ad in a newspaper, or whatever it was, whatever way it was we did things in the dim and distant past. But we went to see it, and I can remember also there was a trailer beforehand for The Road Warrior, Mad Max 2.
Yeah.
And I said to my aunt, can we see that next? And she said, no. I still remember her going, just no, this emphatic negative, there's no way. So I had to wait a few more years to that. But saw Hawk the Slayer, loved it, must have seen it at just the right time, aged 11. And it sort of got hold of me in the way that only your old favorites do. See that one at the wrong age, and I imagine it would hold absolutely no appeal for you whatsoever. But I like the characters, great villain. The story goes in a reasonably straight line. It's very simple, but at no point does it lose its thread. It's got a very basic approach to storytelling. The cast do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the characterization, I think. I mean, the elf, for instance, Crow the elf, he's just this lethal killing machine, and he doesn't really have to do much except slaughter people with his super fast bow and arrow routine. On the other hand, you have Jack Palance just chewing up the scenery like confetti. What a villain! What a great over the top sword waving, ranting villain. Just wonderful. So you have all these very memorable characters going through this reasonably decent story that, as I say, doesn't fall apart. And on the whole, you end up with something that, for me, sticks in the memory in a way that lots of other examples of its type haven't, like Conan, like Beastmaster, like Sword and the Sorcerer, like Krull. I mean, I remember these things, but they don't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
Hawk got me at just the right age in just the right way, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same for me. I think I saw that movie twice. When it would have been, I think it was released around about Christmas time, 1980. So, in the UK, I think you're talking probably January, February of 81 is probably when it was doing the rounds.
Yeah.
And I went with my brother. I went with my uncle. He used to regularly take me to see. Funnily enough, not like the absolute top rank science fiction release, not like the Star Wars movies or things like that, but my uncle Ray would always take me to see movies like The Humanoid, or like the or the Spider-Man TV movies released as movies, or all of that kind of stuff. Terence Hill and Bud Spencer films, if you remember any of those, all that kind of weird sort of B movie stuff. But I think it's just such a fascinating artifact, Hawk the Slayer, and it's because the cast you've got John Terry, not the footballer, but the American actor, who then went on to have quite a sort of heavyweight it's a character acting career. He's in Full Metal Jacket. He plays the captain in that, and he was in the early years of ER. He had quite a heavy plot line in ER where he was a psychologist who ended up having a nervous breakdown. And he's been in lots of quality projects.
Yeah.
And this is really an outlier for him. It's the only thing of this kind he ever really did.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry, mate.
Well, it's funny, because I think it was if it wasn't his first job, it was damn close to it. And you can see that he has the good sense not to try and outact Jack Palance, who really he understands that, this guy's going all in and it's Jack Palance and there's just no point. So instead, what you get, given that the two are supposed to be brothers, is you get the one who's all action, all shouting, all ranting, and then you get the one who just quietly waits and bides his time and lets the other guy reveal himself and then acts, and that's Hawk. And that actually, I think there is a kind of a spaghetti western dollar trilogy influence there. Like, I'll let you reveal yourself, I let you give yourself away and show me everything you've got, and then I'll hit you. And I think Terry's decision to sit back and let Jack Palance chew up the scenery and hog the limelight is a smart one. He can't compete anyway, so why not use it to show up the contrast between the two characters?
I agree, mate, and I think it's the only sensible choice when you're faced with Jack Palance eating the scenery, chopping it up and munching it down in the way that he is. It's interesting because in the '89 Batman movie, there's only one moment where in those films where Nicholson, who's just as over the top as it gets, seems dialed down, and it's when he has these scenes with Jack Palance as the mobster, because you just can't overact versus that guy. His just default setting is just so dialed up to 11.
Yeah, I think so. I saw him in there's an old war movie called Attack.
Oh, that is fucking brilliant, that film, mate.
Yeah, it is, where he ends up, I think he's had an arm taken off when a tank ran over him, and he's still staggering about the place with a bazooka over his shoulder, trying to hunt the tank that took his arm. And there's not much you can do when Jack Palance gets going.
no, it's true. It's a great film, like, great cast. Lee Marvin is great in that, in a part that's really atypical for him. He plays like a kind of snidey senior commander. He's more of a politician than a soldier.
Very much so, very much. He's a player of the game, and he's perfectly happy to let all the kind of wrongdoing that Jack Palance wants to speak out against continue. Yeah, it's very unusual for him.
Yeah, and flipping back to Hawk, another delight is the fact that you've got Bernard Bresslaw, Carry On movie staple, in a relatively straight role as Gort the Giant.
That's right. You've got Bernard Bresslaw, who's, as you say, he is the quintessential Carry On guy, really.
Yeah.
He belongs in there with all those other kind of walking cartoons like Kenneth Williams and Sid James, and yet here he is playing the good-natured stoic sidekick. And he's great at it. Some of the incidental actors are very good too. I mean, you've got Roy Kinnear as the innkeeper, gibbering and jabbering in terror as Voltan hacks up a loaf of bread to make his point. You've got Warren Clark as a nasty witch burning farmer. It's funny to see someone like Warren Clark show up in this, like young and slim, and a couple of years later he would have scaled the giddy heights of Firefox.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which is one of my peculiar favorites. But yes, it is interesting.
He's the justified the damned plane guy in that movie, isn't he?
That's right. He's the sort of Russian dissident resistance guy whose wife has spent the last 10 years in prison. But yeah, it's great to see those guys in that. It's great to see the thing come to life that way. Actually, I think a couple of the nuns. Now, one of them is the wife from One Foot in the Grave.
Brilliant.
Another one is Cheryl Campbell. She's the one who loses her nerve and sells them out. And you have that tremendous actor, the guy who plays the sort of archbishop guy from classics like Ice Cold and Alex and so on, and 633 Squadron.
Oh yeah, man, you're absolutely. I mean, it's heaving with people because there's Ferdy Main. Ferdy Main is in it, right?
Yeah.
And then you do have this. It's a weird confluence of. It's the entire cross section of great British character actors, because you've got all the heavy hitters, and then you don't just have Bresslaw. Graham Stark is in it as well, who's one of the big sidekicks from like things like the Pink Panther movies and whatnot.
That's right. And the witch, the woman character who Hawk saves from being burned as a witch, who's pretty much known only as Woman. So the woman known as Woman. She, I think, was in a lot of the Hammer horror stuff.
Yeah, she was Patricia Quinn.
Patricia Quinn and Rocky Horror Picture Show as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's. I mean, and I think one of the other like male characters is that lad who's in another guy from a load of Hammer films, Shane Bryant, who always used to play really unnerving kind of late teen, early 20s psychopaths.
Right.
He'd turn up in things like Dracula AD 1972 or those kind of movies.
Yeah, and I remembered the name of the Archbishop from 633 Squadron and Ice Cold and Alex is Harry Andrews.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, of course. There you go. The great Harry Andrews.
Yeah. The great Harry Andrews. You can't kill a squadron, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and he shows that he's one of the four in the scene in Ice Cold and Alex, isn't he, in the bar at the end?
That's right.
The Carlsbergs. Yeah.
That's right.
That is a great film, by the way, mate.
It really is.
It's phenomenal. We could do a whole conversation about Ice Cold and Alex. Maybe we will, but not right here. So, so there's all this brilliance to the movie, and it's that cultural imprint of it upon you from that certain key point when you were young, which is what happened with me. So what are your plans for the book?
Okay, so we pick up a few months, maybe a year or so after the end of the story in the movie, and Hawk and Gort have been looking for the influence of the Black Wizards, who I think at the end of the movie, the woman warns them may be on the rise again. And of course, we see at the end of the movie, we see the Black Wizard reclaim Voltan from the dead. They haven't been able to find any sign of them, but Hawk is certain something's up. He just has a bad feeling. And sure enough, things start to happen. Pretty soon, the table of five starts to come together again. There's a mysterious prisoner held in the bowels of the holy fortress of Danesford. It's worth noting that the holy fortress isn't maybe as holy as it might be. There's a young woman called Bella who has a connection to one of the original table of five. And there's a useless tosser by the name of Wayne whose purpose will not become clear. until quite far into the story. It's certainly not apparent to anybody else, and Wayne is the only one who's convinced of his own usefulness. So together they're going to have to face this kind of revival of the ancient evil represented by the Black Wizards. And of course, eventually Voltan will be coming along. He's made his way back down the River of Death. He's as much of a scenery tour as he always was, although he's not what you'd call a familiar face, because his face is now anything but familiar. Generally, what I wanted to do was, instead of doing what a lot of people do when they take on a property like this, when they take on a franchise, I didn't want to expand things too far. I didn't want to turn it into a whole fantasy kingdom with power bases and opposing houses and this kind of stuff. I feel like you can get that anywhere. What I wanted to do was I wanted to focus on what I loved about the movie and the characters and give you more of that, and answer the questions that have been sort of hovering since the end of the film. The elfin mindsword that Hawk carries, for instance, how does that work? And what were the elves doing when they came up with these mind stone things? What are the Black Wizards up to? I mentioned the Holy Fortress. How holy is it really? Why is Crow the elf the last of his kind? What happened there? So I wanted to come up with a new story, but focus on the old characters and make some new ones, create some new ones that would sit well with them. And I wanted to do that rather than change the world of Hawk the Slayer into something completely unrecognizable. As I say, I think there is a tendency to do that when people take on an old franchise. They have a tendency to modernize it, to update it, to make it into something that the people who loved the original for all the right reasons won't recognize, and I deliberately chose to avoid that.
Yeah, well, that's music to my ears, and that comes no doubt as a result of exactly that dynamic of the film imprinting itself on you at that key point where you love it so much that I'm pleased to hear that you want to pay service to it and actually work within that world rather than take it off on a tangent, because there's nothing more exhausting than that. And particularly if you love that character, you love that film, you've only had that one set of 90 minutes to enjoy. Mm-hmm. So generally the people who like it have seen it a ton of times, or what have you, have the Blu-ray and all that. So to get the chance to dip into that world from a comic book perspective, I think that's a real treat. Do you think that you'll get if it goes down well? Have you got more ideas in your head for where you might
go? I'm not sure. I'm going to see how things go on this one. Certainly, when I finished the 5th issue, I felt like that was it. That's what I wanted to say about Hawk the Slayer. But sometimes when a book comes out and you see how people respond to it, it sparks ideas for you too. But really, to be able to do a book like Hawk the Slayer and call it Watch for Me in the Night, and have chapter titles like The Last of Their Kind, that's enough of a treat. That sort of scratches the itch in and of itself. And to be able to take the characters that bit further along the road and answer the questions that you yourself have always wondered about. I did something similar with Johnny Red. I like to think that what I did on Johnny Red could slot neatly into the original run. Well, I think Hawk the Slayer is a decent follow-up to the movie. I think that anyone who liked the movie will see that what I've written here is something very much in the same spirit.
Yeah, well said, mate. You had me as soon as I heard you were doing it. That's my purchase right there. But I can't wait to see it, and I believe the way this is going to work is everybody watching this can see this on the links we're attaching to the conversation. But the strip first appears as a kind of add-on to 2000 AD itself as part of the package. And
I think right? Is it with the magazine?
Yeah, with the magazine. Yeah, that's
the Red magazine. That's right. That I think is in January, and then it'll start. If you want to buy it as a standalone, I believe that will start in April.
Fantastic. And the links to the magazine will be attached to this conversation. Mate, That was a great chat. I never thought for 1 minute that we'd end up talking for 20 minutes about Hawk the Slayer. So I'm glad we've had the opportunity to do that, and that you created this book.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point, isn't it? Like things that should never really have happened, or things that you never expected. My own experience of this is that if you hang on and if you persist, everything happens eventually. 20 years ago, if you told me that I'd be writing Johnny Red, I wouldn't have believed you. Same goes for Hawk. You have these ideas at the back of your head, but only after an awful long time do you realize, actually, this could happen.
Yeah, right on. I mean, there was something else you and I were talking about recently, which I'm not going to talk about now, which is
Right.
another one of those characters that we both love. That and it'd be man. I'd love if you got the chance to do it. And it is just funny. You're absolutely right, because the thing is, ultimately, when these IPs, intellectual properties, are owned by companies always change. The properties themselves don't, and it just has to be owned by the right set of people to open up the opportunity. Right. And that's just a question of waiting people out.
That's right. And it was actually, another good example of that would be Battlestar Galactica. Having seen the thing that we saw back in the 80s, whenever it was, there should never have been another version of that. Never mind one that was so good, one that sort of practically reinvented the entire genre for TV. But the right people got hold of it, and the right people wanted to do it, and the rest is history. I found on Hawk, talking to Jason and Ben and Keith at Rebellion, and realizing that their enthusiasm for it matched my own, and them realizing that I wasn't going to take the piss out of Hawk the Slayer, and I wasn't going to make it into something unrecognizable. I was going to write Hawk the Slayer the way I think most Hawk the Slayer fans would want it to be. That was when we were off to the races.
Right on. Absolutely, mate. And I'm glad those guys are so into it all as well. I can, now that you've said it, I can see it in my head, and I'm glad that you're getting the opportunity to do it, and everybody will be able to check it out here. And thanks for coming on and talking about it, Garth. I can't wait to see it. I really can't.
All right, my pleasure, Andrew. Take care.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV, and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.